California, and particularly Los Angeles. Home prices there plunging more than 3%. So is the U.S. housing bubble near bursting? What are we looking at?
If you believe the people who are in the business of reporting headlines, then it's easy to think that a real estate crash is on the horizon.
You know, I've actually been in the room with other real estate professionals. They've actually said, you know, there's a crash coming. Real estate has a cycle. It's every 10 years. And I'll ask for evidence of that. Like, show me the evidence that the market's going to turn. Well, I've been in this longer than you, kid. I know the truth, right? What are the leading indicators of a crash? And those just don't exist. We're not seeing them.
In this episode of the SLO County Real Estate Podcast with Hal Sweasey, the team gets to the bottom of the possibilities of a crash through just good old-fashioned conversation. Time to take off your tinfoil hats. Here's host, James Bueno.
Welcome, everybody, to the SLO County Real Estate Podcast with Hal Sweasey. Hal Sweasey's with us. How you doing?
I'm great today, James. Thank you.
Mr. Pete, how you doing?
I am excellent. Thanks for asking.
Our escrow manager, Dakota Bailey. How you doing, sir?
I'm doing great. Thanks, James.
And again, JT is on vacation. So today, Hal, should I wait for the real estate market to crash?
Without a doubt, everybody knows the market has shifted, and the volume of home sales is down 20 to 30%, depending on what town, what space you're in, whatever. So it's way down from a peak of last year, which was the highest home sales. In fact, I'm going to throw some loose numbers out. I think last year we closed 6.6 in the country or something like that, 6.6 million homes. Do you remember, Jay?
I don't, but it was up from the
like over
year.
6.5 million.
Yeah.
And then, a few months ago, the National Association of Realtors says, oh, it looks like we're tracking for, 5.3, which is still really, really good because last year was the record, I'm pretty sure.
It was, yeah.
Yeah. And so now they're readjusting it to 4.8. That's a lot less transactions. Plus, now nationwide, we have 1.5 million realtors, where a few years ago we had closer to 1 million.
COVID put a lot of the service industry out of business.
Yeah.
And so I'm seeing a huge wave of waiters, bartenders, service individuals that have gotten licensed now that are getting in the real estate game. There's always a surge of licensees that enter the business just before the turn.
Yeah, when the market gets, real strong. So, yeah, the market's transitioning. So when the volume goes down, I see a lot of people go, well, houses aren't selling, or it's taking longer, there's not as many sales. Well, that doesn't necessarily mean what we call it a crash. But does that affect prices? Well, if the supply of homes doesn't really go up, and it really hasn't, it's gone up a little bit, then prices will hold stable. Jay, you see this on a regular basis.
Absolutely.
With all the agents in the county.
Yeah, we're seeing the appreciation of homes stabilize at 7 to 10% as opposed to the breakneck 25% we were seeing the year prior. And a lot of that has to do with the fact that there is that shift that's going on. Interest rates have come up, and that's pushed buyers out of the pool. But there's still a great deal of relocating humans that are coming here from outside the area, bringing tax bases with them, and interested in retiring in this community or ending up in this community and buying homes here. So the demand has still been high. Days on the market are under 30. They're not 3 or 4 like they were 6 months ago, but there's still a huge demand for real estate. And as long as we're going to be in an environment where we've got low crime, incredible weather, you've got the ocean, the mountain, everything that San Luis County has to offer, there's always going to be a demand for real estate here.
Yeah. So what then would affect the supply? Because the Fed has reduced the demand by raising rates.
Raising rates,
right?
yeah.
We're very interest rate sensitive, right?
Yeah.
So
and Dakota, you're with all the transactions that you're involved in, do you see deals falling apart because buyers that thought they could get in at a 5.5% interest rate no longer have that rate available to them?
Yeah. So whenever we had the kind of the bigger jump in rates, where we went from in the 3s up into the 5s in a 2 to 3 week time, we had people that hey, I've got to get requalified, and if I don't get requalified, I may be looking at houses in the 8s, and I can only afford houses at $650.
Wow, that's a huge jump, or like devaluation. Like they just can't buy.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now here's the thing we're starting to notice. Some sellers are going, oh, if I can't get my price that was what it was in March, when there's a little bit of adjustment, or sell it quickly, I'm pulling my house off the market. So that affects our supply. Mm-hmm. You've got people that you would have downsized or upgraded, but now instead of doing it in a 3% interest rate environment, they're in a 5 to 6% interest rate environment. they don't really want to give up that 3%.
Yeah, well, it doesn't make sense if you're gonna. I mean, you're gonna downsize or move up to the next house, and you've locked in at 3%. Holy crap! Your mortgage can be offset by the rents in today's environment because the rents are so incredibly high.
Right.
I'm a prime example. I'm never going to sell the house I'm in. I'll just buy the next one because I'll never be able to get money that cheap for the house that I have. I'll pull an equity line out to buy the next house and just keep the one I've got, which means there's going to be those individuals and fewer properties on the market in the future.
Yep. So that means it's just less likely for people to sell their homes because of that rate. So when people say to me that, nobody knows what's going to happen, but until the supply issue goes up, it's going to be tough for prices to take anything near, what's it called, a crash. I mean, will there be adjustments up and down all the time? Right.
I think it's important to talk about, what happened in 2006 to 2008 when we had a real crash, a true crash. Anybody that had a pulse, the requirements to borrow money were removed. You had a pulse. It was called stated income loans. You just told them what you make and and they gave you the loan. You could buy whatever, and that drove prices through the roof. What we're seeing in today's environment is quite a bit different. The rates were so attractive, but you still had to qualify for the loan. So that type of activity that created the problem that we witnessed full force from 2008 on it hasn't been created. It's not what we're looking at. We're looking at a real market. People are qualifying for loans. They were really borrowing money at less than 3%. I mean, that's crazy and super awesome for everybody, because those that got into homes got in. Those that could refinance got great rates. They'll be that in those houses you can create some generational wealth there by hanging on to those properties. We're not seeing that, and we didn't see that. What we see is, responsible lending practices. We're seeing a huge demand, and I think the reality is when you look at the homes that were built decade over decade, starting from the 30s. In the 1930s, we built 5.4 million homes in the U.S. And that number went up till the 2010, like from 2000 to 2010, when we built 26.4 million homes in the United States of America. You know how many homes we built between 2010 and 2020?
Like five-ish.
Yeah, 5.8 million.
Yeah, we're like 4 or 5 million behind right now.
That's crazy.
Wow.
Yeah.
It's a huge number. So demand, fundamental economics, right? Price is driven by demand and availability.
And then, for those people that are trying to get into the market as a buyer right now, it's like, okay, well, if it is going to crash, then I'm going to time it and wait, which, could be, who knows, right? It doesn't seem like it because it doesn't seem like prices are going to adjust that much. And at the same time, it appears that, we still have people, so the rents continue to be strong. Rents drive prices, number of homes available, which we don't have as many coming on. People are not moving as much. And then wages. And so right now there's a big push to keep increasing wages. And I don't know where that stands or where that'll level off, but all those things are going to affect our real estate. And then you take the geographical component, which we've talked about a lot, which is much rather be in San Luis Obispo than, I don't want to throw any place under the bridge, but Baton Rouge, Louisiana, or wherever it is. We've got climate, we've got ocean, we've got university, small town, we don't have traffic. So all those things bode well if we're talking about Central Coast real estate.
Unfortunately, I rent, right? But the rental market in SLO County has been tough. There hasn't been a whole heck of a lot of available rentals, but of course that's driving the rental prices up.
Sure.
But Jay, you were saying I'm going to keep my house and rent it, but why isn't there just a large amount of rentals out here right now?
Well, they built some, like that new Cal Poly structure on Choro and Foothill. So there is some rental stock being built, and it's probably going to be the way to solve the housing problem because it's easier to build probably a 100-unit apartment building than 100 homes.
Yeah,
right.
And the demand is there.
Yeah,
I mean, there's a 99% occupancy rate in San Luis County.
Yeah, no, the demand is there, but I am not seeing or noticed, and I looked for a year,
right?
It was tough. It took a long time to find a new rental for me personally.
Yeah, and the rents are high.
Extremely outrageous.
My son's a great example. He's got a 2-bedroom apartment he's paying $3,000 a month for it, and his rent will go up next year. It's scheduled to go up 7% every single year. Yeah. Talk about you want to fix your expenses. Buy a house. Right. You know what your mortgage payment's going to be.
Yeah.
And for somebody that I think. And I'll appeal to the younger generations where you've got the ability with some flexibility. And if you don't have kids and you've got a good job, you've got the opportunity to house hack. Get into a house using some first-time home buyer opportunities, rent 2 of the rooms out and give yourself an opportunity to help offset the mortgage, because it might be higher than your rent, but if you rent rooms out or buy a duplex or a triplex, allow the income off of the additional units to offset your mortgage, you're going to save money, build wealth, and create a huge opportunity for yourself and your heirs.
You are hipper than I thought, because I didn't know what house hack meant.
It's the new kid thing.
House hack?
These kids nowadays,
Okay.
yeah, hacks.
All right.
ADUs too, right? We had that.
Oh, yeah.
Episode on ADUs.
If somebody's waiting for the bottom to drop out, I don't see it. There's nothing in the cards to show it. Now, who knows what could happen in a year or 6 years or whatever. But in general, there would have to be a huge number of people who says, take my keys, take my house, I'm giving it up. I don't care that I don't owe much, or I've got a low mortgage rate, or I have nowhere else to go. I'm going to sell my house. It doesn't seem likely.
Jay, getting back to what you were saying, there's absolutely zero similarities from the 2006 to 2008. They were giving away loans.
Yeah.
There's a huge difference from then to now.
Oh, of course.
Why are people putting those two together like it's going to create another crash if the situations are totally different?
I've actually been in the room with other real estate professionals, not in our wheelhouse, because we talk about the economics and we talk about the numbers and allow them to do the heavy lifting. But they've actually said, there's a crash coming. Real estate has a cycle. It's every 10 years. And I'll ask for evidence of that. Like, show me the evidence that the market's going to turn. Well, I've been in this longer than you, kid. I know the truth, right? Prices and what we're looking at, those are lagging indicators. What are the leading indicators of a crash? And those just don't exist. We're not seeing them. Outside of the meme of the Chris Farley Saturday Night Live skit, when if you don't go to school and you don't do the right thing, you're going to live in a van down by the river. Now if you work hard, you get the opportunity to buy a Sprinter and live in a van down by the river. Right? So if the entire everybody that's made it sells their house to buy a van, that's the one thing that might create inventory. But I don't see that happening.
Yeah.
So we're in more of just a slowdown. It's not affecting prices, right? But we're just slowing down because I think times are different.
Well, I'll counter Jay a little bit. There are certainly cycles in real estate, right? And if you're in the business and the volume drops, the number of home sales, which we're all experiencing, is like, well, for me, it's not that great. If I'm an orange farmer and suddenly nobody wants oranges, then hey, that's not good for you. But in general, there's the two markets we always talk about. How's the market? Which one? The price or the volume? The number of sales or the pricing? And when things slow down, people get nervous, right? And it's just a change. So, and again, here we are talking about rates are probably closer to 6% today, maybe a little above, right? And they change all the time. But even if they got to 7, when we had one of our lenders on here in the early 90s, he goes, I can't wait till rates get back down to the 7s.
Right.
So it's all our approach and how we look at stuff. But in support of what you're saying, Jay, until that supply issue changes, unless everybody stops buying a house and people need a place to live, they're not going to stop buying houses, then we're not going to have any major change in the price configuration here in this county.
Anytime soon.
Yeah. So,
do you recall what were the rates back in the giveaway loan days in the 2006 to 2008? What were the interest rates then?
Well, they were mostly adjustables. They were teaser rate loans, and you didn't have to provide any. How much do you make? I make $600,000. Okay, sounds good. Let's
Perfect.
go. Let's get you a loan. Yeah, we'll put you in at 1% starter rate. I don't remember what the rates were, but it made no sense to me.
Absolutely. I think one of the best movies was The Big Short. That really brought it. If you haven't seen The Big Short, you've got to watch it. It paints a picture. Christian Bale was in it and did an incredible job of playing the main character. But that pinned it, absolutely pinned it from top to bottom. We could talk for like 2 hours on what really happened from Moody and Poor's and the ratings and all kinds of stuff. But watch the movie and you'll get it all.
Hal, you were saying from last year we were down in sales, but month to month locally in SLO County, from what would it be August to September, we had an increase in sales, correct?
Yeah, over the month. Yeah, you're paying attention. Good. Yeah, James, you remember more than I do.
I pay attention.
Yeah, you're doing a good job. Yeah. So, it seems to have leveled, right, in terms of the volume of sales. It's just down from last year. And so...
Well, it's the third month in a row that we've had an increase, I think, right?
Is it? Okay.
I think so.
Well, no. See, I don't
know.
Go, James, go.
You've got a young brain. Mine's old.
So I have the worst memory here, trust me. Trust me.
Isn't it always going to be down from last year because last year was so crazy? I mean, you're going to look back at the sheer transactions that you guys did in basically late 2020 to early 2022, and there'll never be anything that matches that, right?
You can't say never, but the chance
It's our goal.
Yeah, it's very slim, right? It's very slim. It's like I'm waiting for gas to get back to 25 cents a gallon. So
There is one thing that I just spoke with Kevin Irott here a little bit ago. He's the chief title officer and county manager for First American Title, and he brought something up that was really, really interesting, and that is that in the United States of America, we have since the 1850s a prescription for getting a true title deeded interest to real property. I think we all take that for granted because the U.S. is one of the only places on this planet where you can buy and get that assurity that what you're buying belongs to you. Try owning property in Mexico or Guatemala or China. I mean, do you have that surety that what you're buying from who you think is the owner, are you really getting securitized investment? Are you getting something that is backed by a title policy? It doesn't exist anywhere else in the world, or at least a lot of the countries that were mentioned.
Yeah.
And so what does that mean? We've got a lot of international buyers, people that are coming and buying from other countries because they get surety of ownership.
Sure. Yeah. And 30-year mortgages.
Yeah.
It's the only country where you get
Crazy, right?
30-year mortgage, right?
I remember in 2010, we were able to negotiate our rent down. We were renting in downtown San Luis Obispo. It was from a real estate agent owned the home, and she wanted $1,600 for it, and we were like, no, how about $1,350? And she's like, okay, fine. Like the rental market was so beneficial to renters during that short period of time coming off of that, but the rents, like you see house values starting to trickle down a little bit, right?
Sure.
Yeah. But the rents aren't coming down,
Right.
as a result. Any hope for somebody who's renting?
Well, here's what it makes me think of. It's a good question, Jeff. I mean, when COVID hit and most businesses had to close, you work with people, you worked in a restaurant, you were out of work. We would have all thought that half the rental market was just going to, people can't pay their rent. Now, there were subsidies for that, but in San Luis Obispo County, a lot of property managers, and we have a property management company and have some rentals, got together and it's like, are you having any problem? No. Nobody was really having, there's some certain cases where people were given relief. So here you are in a financial lockdown, and we didn't really have a dent in the rental market. Now, from March to May or June of that year, who knew what was going to happen, right, till things open up. So if it's not going to happen then, I don't know what to tell you what's going to happen. Because that, to me, if you weather that.
Where were we supposed to shelter during a pandemic?
At home.
At home,
Yeah.
right? That's what was one of the big drivers over the last 18 months was people were realizing I'm in the wrong house, a bit too big of a house, too small of a house. I want to get in the country. I want to be able to garden. I want to, be in San Luis County, not LA County. I moved to the city because I like the theater and the restaurants, and now I can't do that. So I'm moving to San Luis.
I better get what I want to get to make my life comfortable if I'm going to be forced to be at home.
Yeah.
If somebody's interested in selling their home, and they can, talk about making an appointment with you, you can come in and, you're not a hammer. You're not going to say, if I get there, you're selling your house, right? So
No.
can you kind of explain what you do? And I know you've told people before, don't sell your house, so kind of, let people know what you do.
Well, I try to act as, provide valuable information to the clients, right? And this is a small town, and there are instances where I look at somebody and go, they should sell that house. My brother-in-law just sold his place in Hawaii. He wanted to retire. It's like, yeah, he did fairly well. But it's like, okay, you should probably sell that because you don't want to work anymore and you don't need a $2 million house. And this is in Hawaii, so they're expensive. You go buy something in Boise, Idaho for $500 or whatever and have a lifestyle you can enjoy yourself on. And other times people go, well, I probably should sell the house for certain reasons. So we just talk about the pros and cons. I met with a family the other day, then they had a house right next door. Their aunt, they were in the family, so the aunt passed away, and so the sister was living in the house next door, and they go, well, we'd kind of like to keep it, but the aunt got a reverse mortgage. So here's call it a $900,000 house with a $500,000 reverse mortgage. And, could they pay it off? Okay, they could do that, so they got to come up with $500,000. Then to get it ready to rent, it's been deferred, so they need another $100 to get it rental ready. So now they're into it for $600,000. So if they put 300 in and get a loan for 300, basically if they rented it out, for a $300,000 investment of their own, they'd make $100 a month. Or because someone passed away, they get what's called a stepped up basis. So even though they have a huge gain in the property, when you have a trust, which we should cover sometime, you pass away, you get the basis. So what they show is what they paid for it is going to be the value very close to the time when they sell it. So meaning if they sell it for $900, there's no taxes on that. So now they can pay off the $500. They get $400,000 after that, roughly, that they can spread among the beneficiaries versus keeping and renting. And I go, in that case, you should certainly sell it, because if it goes up 20% in the next 2 years and you sell it then, your basis, that $200,000 is now taxable. So there goes a certain percentage to the federal government, a certain amount to the state. Then you split it by the heirs. You've been a landlord. You put $100,000 into it. Plus you had to pay off the reverse mortgage. So sometimes you just go through those things with people. That's more it. And then, hey, if you get X for your property, in this case $900,000, what's that going to do for you? And can you get the house you want? Got a lot of people that are in their bigger houses want to scale down. It's difficult. And it's difficult because there's not as much demand for big houses, and a lot of people want one level, low maintenance houses that don't take as much responsibility. And that what you give up for a more expensive house to go down, you could go down from a 2,500 square foot house and pay almost the same price for a 1,500 square foot one level. And I'm throwing those numbers around, but in general, scaling down is tough. So sometimes I've just had another family that they decided not to buy here. They bought in St. George, Utah. So they went and bought a house for $500,000, got a nice retirement home, and they're going to be better off. So that may make sense for them too. So we just talk about the options, and then I can just tell them from a real estate perspective, and should I keep it? Should I rent it? If I move, what does that mean? What happens to my property taxes? We look at all those things.
So how do people get in contact with you now that you're a podcast superstar and a social media star? Hal Sweasey is the one that will show up to the house.
Yeah, I have an agent now. So no. Just call the
me.
office.
I'm your agent.
Yeah. It's on the website. If you're listening to this, 805-781-3750. We use telephones.
We do.
Yeah, we talk.
And also that same number, you can shoot us a text. If somebody didn't want to call, they can text us and say, hey, I'd like to talk to Hal to come to my house. And even if somebody's just thinking about it, right? You'll come, just give them the info.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
All right, gentlemen, anybody have any more questions or comments about the market? Don't tell JT the market crash.
Well, you know what? I should at least quote JT before we leave, and he would say, "There's what are the two best times to buy a house? 20 years ago and today." I tried. That was my best JT.
Oh yeah, that was a good try. So
you need an agent now after that performance.
Yeah, just for everybody out there, if you could help us out, please, and don't tell JT that we talked about this on our podcast today. We'd appreciate it.
Yeah.
Gentlemen, thank you very much, Dakota, Jay, and Hal. Thank you so much. We will see you guys next week.
Great.
Thank you for listening to the Hal Sweasey podcast. Be sure to subscribe and rate this podcast. It comes out every Monday, so check for it in your feed for the latest information on the San Luis Obispo County market. The Slow County Real Estate with Hal Sweasey podcast is available wherever you get your podcast and on halsweasey.com, where you can find current listings and other real estate tips. halsweasey.com, that's HALSWEASEY.com. I am James Bueno, Director of Marketing for the Hal Sweasey Group. If you're looking for anything real estate, give us a call, 805-781-3750.
Hal Sweasey is a licensed California real estate broker. DRE number 01111-911. The Slow County Real Estate with Hal Sweasey podcast is a production of AGM Podcasts. Subscribe wherever you get your podcasts.